So everybody, I am back. So I am going to continue my lecture on unit 4 and then historical overview. That is this one, historical overview. Historical overview. So you are watching the 14 slides overview. So let me quickly go through it. So ancient Korea and Japan, they both start with the Neolithic civilization. And then in the Neolithic civilization, they created this type of pottery. So Korea's case, you have pointed bottom, so called comb patterned ceramic. Comb means this pattern that you see on the surface, like a diagonal lines. It's very thin and in a way the regular intervals. So interpret it as combs. You know, the way you see the hair combing combs. So comb patterned vessel, and there are different kinds. There are more. If you search for the museum collections. So this one, both of them are really famous one, especially this one, Amsadong, was excavated in Amsadong. So these are types. During the Neolithic civilization, like Amsadong is along the Han River, where you have Ubongli and Sejukli along the Nakdong River. So during the Neolithic period, civilizations or villages developed along the main rivers. Like these are the main rivers. River flows to the ocean, right? Like they flow toward the ocean, right? So they were living along the riverside, and naturally they had a soft clay, so they made potteries made of clay. So they were baked at a certain temperature, but not as hard as porcelain that you are thinking of, and there is no glazing. So like a terracotta plant, the water may permeate a little bit. And this is Amsadong pre-settlement site. It's in Seoul. You can go to the park. And then these comb patterned jars are related to Siberia. Combs that are, you can see here. So where are they located? Like Russia, right? The current Russian comb patterned ceramics are here in the northern part of Eurasia, Caspian Ocean, and Russia and Siberia. And then if you go all the way, then you end up going to the Korean Peninsula. So it is pretty interesting to see the connection with the nomadic culture, not the mainland Chinese culture. So during the Neolithic period, you have this type of stone axe. Neolithic means new stone, and you are going to see more stone objects well carved. And then you are moving into Bronze Age, and then after the Bronze Age, you are transitioning from Bronze to Iron Age, and that transition took place sometime in Gojoseon area. Currently, we know the name of Gojoseon in historical documents made by Chinese people, but we don't see archaeological sites of Gojoseon of this early period. Like currently, we see historical period starting from the 3rd or 4th century. That is proto-kingdoms or beginning of 3 kingdoms. So we have this dynasties called Gojoseon, but its origins are a little ambiguous. But according to Chinese textbook, Chinese historical record, Gojoseon's territory was as large as this. So it includes Manchuria, a little bit of the northern part of Chinese territories, and then the entire Korean peninsula. So Gojoseon's foundation is also mentioned in Korean history books written in the 13th century by historians in Goryeo dynasty. So in it, they explain this founder of Gojoseon. His name is Dangun. But if you go all the way up, Dangun is coming from the heaven. So there is a Lord of Heaven named Hwanin. He sent his son called Hwanung in order to rule the Korean peninsula. So he's a mountain god, and he got married to a bear turned into a woman. So this person is called Ungyo, meaning bear woman. So they got married, and their children, their child is Dangun. So he, because it's half divine, half human, or plus animal. So he decided to live in this world and benefit entire humanity. So he is called Gojo-san. So this is a legend, or this is called mythology. I mean, how can you prove a bear turned into a woman, right? Mythological DNA transformation, right? So these are more like mythology of a foundation of a legend. So you can see that indigenous peoples of Korea probably had a newcomer called Manung or Hwanin's son. So they are coming from the north. And then the indigenous group who were living in the Korean peninsula, and these people probably had the venerated bear as their totemic symbol. And then there was some sort of a political negotiation between two groups, and then they decided to rule the majority of the Korean peninsula. So you can interpret it in a little bit more realistic manner. So that is the historical background. So after the Gojo-san, you are going to have that three kingdoms period, and then you are going to have a unified Silla. So out of three kingdoms of Goguryeo, Baekje, Silla, it's the Silla who made the unification, and then it goes to unified Silla. So in this unit, I think you are only studying up to the unified Silla, and then it goes to Goryeo, Joseon. Now let's go to Japan. Japan is an island. And from the beginning, they were somewhat isolated because it's island off the coast. So in Japan, they developed their indigenous religion that is called Shinto, and we call it Shintoism, the way we call it Buddhism, Shintoism, and it literally means way of the gods. So it's not an organized religion. This is more like animism. So believe in natural objects with spirits. So trees can have a spirit, or if you have a small river or pond nearby, it can have a spirit. Or if you have a little pit in your garden, that can have a spirit. So you are surrounded by all the spirits. But out of all the spirits, you have some important spirits, and they are kami. They are called kami, sort of major gods. And then a higher level of kami or gods are related to ancestor worship ceremonies. So here, Ise Shinto shrine, they venerate imperial households ancestors. They are kamis, they are gods. So each pavilion holds a little plate of their name and symbolic object to commemorate these kami. And Shinto shrines were rebuilt periodically because these are all made of woods and some of straws. They're not permanent. So it's really 100% sustainable cycle. When they become a little bit shabby and run down or blown off by a hurricane, you're going to rebuild it. And every 20 or 50 years, again, you must rebuild it to maintain it in order to carry on. So Ise Shrine is one of the oldest Shinto shrine complex, and people say it preserves well the 4th century construction. So when they rebuild it, they don't use contemporary techniques or designs. They always replicate the old previous design over and over. So the main structure of a Shinto shrine does not change. So Ise Shrine is one of the oldest shrines in Japan. So Shinto these are symbols of Shinto. It's the Tori. Tori is the name of the gate, that they have this gate. And then the Shinto shrine is surrounded by these large walls. And then I want to emphasize that in Japan, most of buildings and monuments were predominantly built by woods, made of wood. They have cypress trees and they have enormous trees in the mountains. So basically, they create precisely cut units of wood, and then they assemble it without any nails or adhesives, and then they somehow interlocking each other well. So this is how Japanese architecture withstood earthquakes or hurricane or any other natural disasters. But one element that they are so vulnerable to is fire. Now you can imagine how vulnerable dry wood is to the fire. So in Japan, somebody who is an arson, right, who sets the fire, they are really worst criminal in their community. So without the fire, this type of long 5-story pagodas, somehow they can manage to survive that earthquakes. Their weight is somehow compensated by each other. But if they are fastened by nails or sort of cement-style adhesives, they will tumble. But because they are this interlocking wooden structure, they are more flexible and agile. And what do you need in order to make this precisely cut part of wood? You only need saw. Like you only need various shapes of knife, and that's okay. You can create this. I wanted to emphasize that Japanese people are so good at preserving their cultural heritage. So we should learn from them. Other cultures, of course, they also had a good way of preserving their civilization. But in Japan, one advantage is they didn't suffer so much from outside invaders. They fought, but those were mainly civil wars among themselves. So we should give them some credits that credits that they didn't demolish their own cultural heritages or temples. So that's the end of historical overviews. I'm going to finish the recording.